because maybe it's highly possible that, because there was no YouTube at the time, where else
Right.
could all these people go who love to do what we're doing now, right? And I guess, yeah, at its most simplest, I guess, advertising allowed you that was your day job. That's your, it gave you a stable enough income, but at the same time, it allowed you to scratch that itch of yeah, exactly, telling stories, coming up with fantastic visuals. Thinking about it now and taking and following the flow of your conversation. Before I joined Lego, I was working in the Macan World Group system. So in Macan, I was part of MRM, which is the digital discipline of Macan. And before MRM, I was part of Harrison Communications, which is the sister company of Macan. And if I think about the stuff I worked on in those, and I worked there for 17 years, I did a sci-fi commercial. I did what do you call this? Live action Bioman type commercial. I did a commercial with celebrities.
There you go.
I did a commercial so it's like, yeah, what kind of life would you be able to say from month to month? Suddenly you're solving another problem. You're creating a new 30-second epic story. So especially if you're the type of person with a short attention span, then I guess advertising is kind of like a good place for you, because yeah, you'll never know, for better or worse, week on week, day by day, things will suddenly change.
Right.
And I think it is, and I'm sure, and I got to meet some people also from the TV networks, from ABS-CBN, from GMA, and it felt like it was a similar type of lifestyle, although I think their life is more intense.
Really.
But there, it does prepare you to be more resilient, to be able to bounce back, and again, or you don't have a choice, but you have, it sometimes feel, the joke was before reality shows, we were the reality shows where, you have 24 hours to solve this problem, or else, we lose the business, or we lose this account. Or,
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So it kind of felt that way. So there was a certain excitement. Of course, there was a high stress level as well. But there, I guess that's why some creative people, or like if you take a look at this, small number of us are in or was in an advertising agency.
I see.
So there.
Going by what you said earlier, you said that, the intensity, and then, having all of these commercials that you did before. I want to jump back a little bit now, going towards where you have made an impact in the community and into the entire geek fandom community, sort of to speak.
All right.
Part of the things that I did while I was talking you,
yes,
was that I watched a couple of clips on YouTube, with your involvement in the Aswang Project. The YouTube videos that talked about the Philippine mythology, and I think that has something to do with the work that you've done with Trese, along with Kadjo Baldissimo. So why don't you tell us about that? How did you get pulled into these things, man? I know this is somebody else's work, talking about mythological beings and creatures and cryptozoology and all of that, and then how did you get involved in the Aswang Project, man?
Oh, it was just Jordan Clark just reached out to me. Funny that you now ask about. I'm trying to remember the first time I got in touch with Jordan. I do remember watching his documentary first in YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So I think ever since he started his YouTube channel, I think, and Jordan can correct me on this. I kind of remember, I would like leave comments. Of course, I loved how he linked the possibility that the legend of the Aswang might be related to a medical condition that people just didn't understand at the time, and it was a medical condition prevalent in Capiz, for that matter. And then finally he set up, so that was called the Aswang Phenomenon when he started that documentary and uploaded it online, and then he finally started his website.
Right.
Um, and then I think, so yeah, we somehow got in touch with one another. I can't remember if it was him commenting on Trese or me commenting on his site. But it eventually came to a point when there were times when he would upload something and then I ask him questions. And then I started to ask him questions offline. So I would be doing research for Trese and then I would like ask him.
Oh,
And,
so he became one of your source material
yeah,
in a
yes,
way. Wow.
yeah. It was, and I had this quick discussion with Carl de Mesa, who
Hmm.
wrote the recent feature on Trese for Vice.com. But he said, "Isn't it funny that it had to take a Canadian to come up with a website about Philippine, folklore and
Right. Right.
mythology?"
Right.
And yeah, I was just saying, it's funny that sometimes it's the outsider that finds our stuff fascinating. And although I think that is changing, I think that says something that we don't seem to have. If Philippine history has an Ambeth Ocampo, who is the Philippine equivalent of Philippine folklore and mythology, right? Who's that? That guy that's just constantly living and breathing and talking and preaching about Philippine mythology from a
Right.
historical and academic and research perspective. And so far, I think it's Jordan Clark.
Right, I know, and that's one of the things that I noticed in the Aswang project is that when I did a little bit of dive into how this project came together, and I noticed that it's a very foreign led kind of project, which is not really sad, but it's kind of interesting to know that you're right. It took a Canadian to to look into a Filipino mythology and folklore because one of the things that struck me was that it's a very common thing everywhere you go. There are always stories about aswang, kapres, tikbalangs, and all of that. And I went through my own reading of these things, not at a highly academic level, but I would know that there are no stories of aswang up north. And one of the funny things that I realized is that if you see an aswang, and this is purely literal, and so if you see an aswang somewhere in the north, you'd know he's Bisaya. Because that's what they would say. That's what the people from Ilocos would say. Bisaya yan. Because there are no Ilocano aswangs unless the sickness has gone and has infected a person. And there's no manananggal Ilocano. And you think about it. I mean,
That's a great story. It is. I mean, which kind of connects, I guess, to like how one of the theories on why we started to come up with the Aswang stories is, I remember back in college we read this. It was a paper for and I did not get a good grade, so don't quote me on this. But I remember they said the paper talked about how, yeah, I didn't get a good grade there. I'm sure my professor Rick, at least I remember my professor Ricky Abad, who's a great teacher. Part of the paper said we have come up with these stories about the aswang that lives outside of the barrio, that lives outside of the barangay, because it was a social control. It was a way to keep outsiders out.
right.
So when you joke about, kung aswang yan galing Bisaya yan, alam mo yun, that's actually the sentiment of people, like, don't trust the outsider. He or she might be an aswang. And
Exactly.
the paper went as much to say it was also a control for, what do you call this? For husbands to not cheat on their wives.
Right,
Because they'll say, right, oh, that pretty lady outside of the barangay, that's an aswang.
yeah. You're gonna get a different eating too. You know what I'm saying?
No. and hence the term, I guess, in aswang, right? So
Exactly. And these things, I really love reading about these things. As a matter of fact, I have a project with one of the guys that are one
Yes.
of the guys that are part of my team, and we want to bring back the love for Filipino culture, for Filipino literature, and the supernatural part of it. There's just so many stories to tell, and the interesting part of the history behind these stories. Another thing that I learned is that in all depictions of the manananggal, right? You would never see them flying through the woods.
Because
Apparently, and I cannot cite the source of this book that I read. Apparently, apart from the wingspan, they're they're trying to avoid natural predation, which
oh,
which then come in the form of those who dwell in the trees, which can easily snag them from above. So in any case, I'm thinking it's either, I don't know, maybe it's a capre or whatever, I don't know, but whatever depiction of the manananggal would be, it's always seen flying above the forest. They would never dwell in the forest. They would always be in a house or in an abandoned warehouse where I don't know, I see Magalona was there at some movie or whatever, but
yes.
and but it's never in a forest. You'd never see aswang or manananggal living in the forest. It's always by the edge of the forest or outside of it, which is very interesting.
Makes sense. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that'd just be sad. It'll be like you're flying through the forest and like a wildcat or an alamid would suddenly jump from a tree and just eat you.
Right, and you have exposed innards. You're like a flying dish of tocino, flying for everybody to just get you.
Yep. That absolutely makes sense. Or like a monkeys would suddenly attack you. Yep. You wouldn't want that. No.
Yeah, right.
Makes sense to me.
Anyway, that's good. That's good. Now, since we're already talking about that, I have a question for you though. I have a rhetorical question. And this came up in some of the drinking sessions with the guys. And it's dumb, I know. Let's say a person gets plagued by a Mangkukulam and a Mambabarang.
Okay.
At the same time. All right.
Yes.
So this person happens to have pissed off both of them at the same time, right? From your opinion, whose magic would take over more? Given their skill sets, given their specialities and whatnot. Let's say that guy's me. All right. Let's get. Oh no. You know what? Yeah, let's get that guy's me. And I'm a very obnoxious guy. I pissed off a Mangkukulam and a Mambabarang at the same time. They decide to do their rituals at the exact same time. And it hits me at the same time.
Okay.
Which one would prevail?
Wow. That's a good question.
And just to throw something out of, just to throw a wild card in, who would Trese come after first?
Oh,
there you go.
Nice question.
Yeah.
This would only come up when you're drunk, I guess.
Yeah. I'll tell you about another one, but I want you to answer this first. But
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I would say yes. Who would have it would be the more seasoned one, the one that would have the more powerful magic.
I'd say they're both equal.
If they're both equal.
I just want to know, let's say from your opinion, which magic would be more potent in this scenario where everything is equal, perfect scenario, they're both of equal skill, equal greatness, whatever. And I just happen to have obnoxiously pissed them off at the same time. Who would win? And who would Trese come after first?
Who would... I would have two different answers for that.
Okay.
I would say that my guess is, and again, I haven't really fully researched on the potency of the barang and the kulam, right? But I would say the kulam would strike. The barang would be the one that's most what do you call this? The barang's effect on you would be the most obvious because it would involve the insects, right?
Right.
So you would see insects manifest on the body, so you know that you have been cursed by a Mambabarang. So most probably Trese would then first assume it was a barang causing the attack, and then she would find a way to track down the barang, not knowing that the person was also under a kulam.
Okay.
That
But the,
sounds
but
like a great story right now.
I know, right? All right. So you're saying the kulam would hit first. The kulam would put you under a spell, put you ill and put you sick and all that. But
Yeah.
then but then again, it's more of an underlying sickness, more of a silent symptom, so to speak. So
Yeah,
if you were
yeah.
to put it in a sickness, let's say it's more like a headache, whereas the
Yeah.
barang would make you puke and all of that. So that's a more obvious thing a doctor would do. And Trese would go
Yeah.
after the barang first, not knowing the mangkukulam is still out there. That's pretty interesting. Huh? That's a pretty
Yeah.
interesting thing. Okay, okay.